Okay, we have all of that pushed up to the current version. So this is a merge between the art and the game code. That is all up in GitHub. So the art department can actually pull this down, try out the flinging of the beer if they really want to. We are going to now make it so that when you press the slide button, it spawns a beer. Remember where the beer is supposed to spawn. 22,170. We can do, there's a node 2D, and a type of node 2D called a marker 2D. This marker 2D is really convenient because it just serves as a point that sits there and can be moved and all of that, but really it's just meant to mark a 2D position. In this case, the drink spawn point. Drink spawn point. We're going to move that to where the drink used to be, or will end up being. So drink spawn point is going to be at 22,170. So if we move the drink, our drink spawn point is right where the drink is supposed to be. So hit delete, get rid of the drink. We don't need to have a drink there by default. This is where we talked about how in the script, referencing the drink by name could be a bit of an issue. So we need to add in a way to track which drink it is that we're flinging down the bar. To do that, we just make a variable, and we're just going to call it, let's call it the current drink. So cur drink, and we're going to make that, we're not going to tell that to be anything specific. Well, I'll show you something a little later about like class names and things that might make it easier to track all of these things and make sure that things are assigned to be the right stuff. So current drink, and if you just put var current drink there, it's just going to make it null, so it'll be nothing. On ready, we're not going to do anything. We might do something later, but not now. Easiest way to reference something without adding it in a too complicated of a way is to drag it over here. And before you let go, you hold down Control and let go of left click there when you're dragging, and it'll make this variable for you, and it'll assign it when it's on ready. So that way we have the drink spawn point always reference back to whatever we put here, which is really convenient. We'll get rid of this print, put pass in there, because we're not doing anything on process right now. When we release, we don't want to send the reference to the drink because we might not have it. So we need to check if you release the slide control and current drink exists, meaning it's not nothing, so it's not null, it's not none, then you can tell the current drink to apply an impulse. So what I was saying about like class names and everything like that is where this can get a little tricky, because if I delete, I'm just going to cut that out, and I start typing something, we're not seeing that apply impulse function come up anymore. And that's because our script doesn't know what current drink is supposed to be. So the way I like to do this to make this a lot easier to like have the functions that are built into the thing that it extends be callable. So like if we wanted apply impulse to show up there when we hit period after current drink, easiest way to do it right now would be var current drink do colon, and this sets the type of it. And we know that drink is a rigid body 2D because its type is right here, rigid body 2D. So we could just say rigid body 2D. And that way, current drink's type would be rigid body 2D. Then if I cut this out again, when I go to try and do a function there, now we're seeing the rigid body 2D functions. That's one way to do it. The way that I like to do things is if I know that I'm going to have a baseline drink, and then maybe there's going to be future drinks that do different things, behave differently, but they're all going to be drinks of some kind, I like to make a parent class by attaching a script, put that in the scripts folder. And so this extends rigid body 2D, but then we're going to make our own type. So instead of referencing rigid body 2D here, we're going to reference our own type that we make. And we do that by going class name. And then for our purposes, we're going to make a class called drink. So a drink object will now be of class type drink, as well as of class type rigid body 2D. Because we're basically saying rigid body 2D is the parent, drink is the child, and there's an inheritance there. That's the technical term for it. So if we go back in here, we can now say that our current drink has to be of type drink. And since drink is a rigid body 2D, we can still see all of the rigid body 2D methods, as well as any methods we add to the drink script, which we may do. So now that we've sorted out that whole drink reference and class name stuff that's a little bit more complex, it simplifies things a lot in the future. Once you know how to do it, it's very few steps to do it. It's not necessarily easy to do it. It's easy for me because I know the steps. Once you know the steps, it's easy. Now everything should function almost the same, except we're not going to see a drink spawn. And when we click, nothing's happening because there's no drink. There's no current drink. So what we need to do is add in new input handling. We'll just copy this line. If action pressed slide. So if we press down the slide control, we need to spawn in a drink. How do we spawn in a drink? It's like, it's not in the scene. We need to reference it somehow. So what's going to happen here is I'll just hit pass. I'll put in pass here for now. Or you know what? Just to prove that like when you press it, does the thing. Make it print that it's spawning the drink whenever you press it. So I'm clicking and it's saying spawn drink, but no drink's showing up because we aren't actually spawning the drink. In order to spawn the drink, we can create a nice little function. Function spawn drink. And this is a custom function. This isn't a built-in one. This is one that we're making ourselves. And I'm actually going to put an underscore in front of that because I don't want anything outside of Playground calling that and just like spawning drinks all over the place. To spawn a drink, do we need any arguments? Do we need to give it any information? No, we don't. Not every time the function is called, but we do need certain information for the function to run on. So if you control /, you can start putting in comments in things. And so we'll put in some comments to kind of describe what we want to do. The ultimate step is we want to what's called return. So functions return values. When they complete, they can use something called return, and that outputs a value. So you can say like a function that's like add two numbers, and you give it 1 and 2. It'll output 3 in theory if you program it to do that. If it has return, 1 plus 3, whatever those variables are, it'll return 4 in that case. So if we want to return a drink, we're actually just going to work backwards from the return. If we want to return the drink, well, we need a variable that is a drink in the first place. So now we've got the very beginning and the very end. Cool. But this drink is nothing. How do we actually create the drink object? In Godot, there are things called scenes, the scene files that we've been working with. I can't drag this in here, I don't think. I can. It's a little weird because it's referencing it. This is not how you do it. Because we don't want to use the $sign things to reference stuff unless it's at the very beginning of like a script. What we want to do is we want to go find our scene file and our drink.tscn. Could we just drag this in and say that drink equals that? No, because the tscn is just a file. It's not actually the object itself. It's just a file that defines what the object is. So we instead need to create what's called a packed scene. And we're going to use a tag here called export, which allows us to set things in this inspector view of the playground. And you can see current drink right here. Export, because export is thinking we're exporting current drink here, but we're actually going to export the drink scene. And that is going to have to be a packed scene. I learned, it's got to be a export var drink scene, packed scene. I learned how to do that through the Godot tutorials. There's some really great tutorials that go through a lot of the basics. If you actually go to the Godot documentation, we'll see at introduction here, it's under getting started, and then your first 2D game. This, your first 2D game, goes through like how to set up a whole game that does what they show here in this GIF. It's really helpful for understanding the fundamentals. I highly recommend going through it in addition to anything from like GDQuest or other tutorial channels. They're really great. Going back to our project, packed scenes are that TSCN file smushed into something that can be referenced later. We want this packed scene to be loaded from our scenes and our drink scene. So now our drink scene is loaded into this variable called drink scene, and we can say that drink equals drink scene. Packed scene has a function called instantiate, which creates an object of that scene. So an object that you can use, like a drink on the actual screen, will get spawned in. This instantiate will put it at 0, 0. So what we need to do is when we call the drink, drink scene, we need to say that drink.global position, because global position is where it shows up in the entirety of the scene and the world and everything like that. We're going to make it the type. So colon equals just makes it the type of that. So we should be able to see global scene at that point, or global position. But yeah, global position is just where it's going to be. So we need to make the drink's global position the same position as that marker. So that does mean we actually need to pass in. There's two options actually. We can either pass in the information into the function, or we can just say drink.globalPosition equals drink spawn point dot global position. That way, the drink ends up having the same global position as the spawn point, and so it'll get moved to be right there when we spawn it. And then we return the drink that we just spawned. So when we do this, we just say current drink equals the return of the spawn drink function that we did down here. Then in theory, if we run this, when I press click, it should have showed up, but it didn't. We have to figure out what's going on there. A nice way to debug this, if I hit play, drink spawn point, okay, nothing's happening. We can go to remote and see if the drink even showed up. It doesn't look like it. And then another debugging tip is if we just put a breakpoint there. So you click in the margin here where the little like see-through red dot shows up. You click and it creates a red dot. Hit play. And I click. Okay, we are spawning a drink. It is actually a drink. A little bit of tunnel vision in recording here, but I see exactly what's going on. We can't just spawn something in without making it a child of something. It needs to get added into our like scene tree. So there's an overarching scene tree that when you instantiate something, it has no parent. And if you don't give it a parent, it'll just go away. It'll get, deleted. What we need to do in here is that drink that we get back from spawn drink, we just need to put it in as a child to the playground, which is this script. So we just say add child drink. And now we should see that drink show up. And we let go and it goes flying. And we can just send a bunch of drinks and it's going crazy. So that's really fun. We see some physics weirdness there because I've spawned so many drinks. Now that we have that goal accomplished, we're just spawning in drinks and sending as many down the bar as we want. We need to put that up into GitHub and call that a checkpoint.